To pull no punches, as always, my guest, Larry Klayman. Hello, Larry.
Jason, great to see you, my good friend.
It is always good to see you, Larry. I love it when you're on the show, and frankly, it's been too long. I think it's been maybe almost 2 weeks since you and I spoke with Ryan Bundy. There has been so much that has happened since then. I know you want to focus tonight on the radical left and their war to destroy America. I've put together a graphic with some of the craziest of the crazy. What are we going to talk about right now?
Yeah, actually, let me show my little Duke shirt here. I got a mourning because they lost yesterday to North Carolina.
Ah, yes.
That's my alma mater. But in any event, yes, this is a great visual that you put up because these people are absolutely vile. Yeah. And of course, you focused on Adam Schiff. And we've announced at Freedom Watch, you can go to freedomwatchusa.org, an investigation into Adam Schiff, the congressman from West Hollywood's finances, you know, tit for tat. You asked for it, you got it, Toyota. You want to get into President Trump, we'll get into your finances. And we're looking at that as we speak. I have a friend of mine who's a private investigator. He's looked at FEC records. He's looked at House financial disclosure forms, and it's inexplicable so far how Adam Schiff apparently lives in 2 multi-million-dollar houses between Hollywood and between suburban Maryland, but yet he shows little to no assets. So where's that coming from? And this will be something really interesting to follow up on. In a brief interview I did on Newsmax a week ago, it's already up to about 70,000 views. So people are obviously very interested in Adam Schiff. And that's probably because he's so transparently a liar and so transparently evil that people have fixated on him. And this is the guy who's going to be trying to take the president apart, along with Gerald Nadler, chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, along with Nancy Pelosi, who's the Speaker of the House. You know, in addition to representatives like Omar, the Muslim representative who's going after Trump and everybody else. I mean, it's just a crowd of criminals up there. It's unbelievable in the House of Representatives.
Yeah. I want people to know, Larry, we're not speaking hyperbolically. I agree with you. These people are actually criminals. Now, on Tuesday, we had another episode of More Pain with Michael Moore, and he told me something that I had not been aware of. Nancy Pelosi's father has been thoroughly investigated by the FBI and was fairly high on the totem pole of organized crime there in Baltimore. And this was Thomas D'Alessandro Jr. He was a constant companion of notorious mobster Benjamin Magliano, and he was like a kiss the ring kind of guy, where it's basically known, there's extensive documentation of her father's criminal activity. What do we think about that?
Something we need to look at. Obviously, it's serious. I'm not making any accusations. I had a client, my very first client, when I went into private practice in Washington, D.C., and he was from Queens. And I said, Enzo, do you have mafia in your family? And he said, are you kidding me, Larry? We all have mafia in our family. And he wasn't mafia. He was a really fine man. But it's interesting. And I was asking that about Mario Cuomo at the time, because you might remember that Bill Clinton, in a communication that he had with later to be my client, Jennifer Flowers, called Mario Cuomo mafia. And Cuomo comes from Queens. So I was just curious. But it wouldn't surprise me if Pelosi had mafia in her family. And that's no aspersions to Italians. I really love Italians. I have many Italian clients and friends, and even married one at one point. So it's not in any way an Italian thing. But yes, it's very likely she probably does have mafia in her family, and hopefully not her father.
Well, the thing that I'm wondering is, is there some sort of organized crime connection that would cause members of Congress to want to prevent this border wall? President Trump has spoken about how human trafficking is rampant over the southern border of the United States. Drug trafficking is rampant. and they just insist that it's a waste of money. They don't want the wall. But it seems pretty obvious to me. You see these interviews with border agents, and they talk about how they're picking up dead children in the desert daily from they're becoming dehydrated from this trip. Putting up a wall would make it difficult to drive a van across if there's a wall there.
No, you're absolutely right. Maybe they should offer Pelosi's father or the family, because Italians are in the construction industry by and large, and they like to bury people in cement, you know?
Well, I have a lot of friends who are Italian, and we have a lot of viewers who are Italian. By no means do we mean to imply that just because somebody is Italian, they're in the mafia, but if the FBI has investigated a person, Jewish, Italian, whatever they might be, and determined that they're a member of organized crime, I think it's very interesting that those people are now in Congress. And I mean, you raised the point of Adam Schiff's expensive homes. What's the salary of somebody in Congress?
Let me back up on the Italian comment. I meant that with some humor because, like I said, I really love Italians. And, you know, there's a Jewish mafia, too. I'm Jewish origin. Meyer Lansky obviously was pretty big in that, Murder, Inc. So not all Jewish people or Italians are mafia, that's for sure. But you know, that was something which I thought would be kind of funny. You could bury people in the wall if you were mafia.
Put them in there. Now, so Adam Schiff has these expensive homes. I lived in Hollywood for a couple of years while I was in the movie industry. It was very expensive. How do members of Congress afford all these multiple homes? What's the salary in Congress?
Well, you know, again, I'm not making a specific allegation, but it has been known that congressmen take bribes. So do senators, so do judges, so do anybody in a government position. You know, one reason why, Jason, I'm a conservative libertarian, in effect, is because when you bring government into things and they take control of private lives, of business lives, then you give a reason to bribe them, okay, to get what you want.
Right.
And President Trump, when he announced the presidency, to run for the presidency back in 2015, actually bragged about bribing politicians. He says, I know what it's like. I bribed them all, you know, legally. And now I'm not going to bribe them. I'm worth $8 billion, so I don't have to. But that's the way it works. You give government control and you create an incentive to bribe government people. And that's one of the problems with letting the government take control of our lives, because it opens the door to dishonest people who will pay bribes. I don't know about Schiff. We're going to investigate. If we find something, we'll hold him accountable. We'll bring him in front of our citizens' grand juries. You can see that and read about that at freedomwatchusa.org. But I'll tell you something. The guy is just so insipid and so rank dishonest that it would surprise me if we didn't find something.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. He does not exude honesty, and when I met him on the Long Island Railroad and spoke with him briefly, he had that wild-eyed look about him when I asked him what evidence they had in this Russia collusion. I mean, that was like 2 years ago at the beginning of it, and there's still been no evidence presented. We're hearing that Mueller is going to wrap up his investigation and issue some kind of a report. Any indications as to when that's going to happen or what the report might hold?
Several reports that it's going to happen next week. And that will not be the end of Mueller's investigation. We know it's continuing. So this will be like an interim report. You might remember, you're younger than I am, that Ken Starr, when he was independent counsel, issued an interim report, which later went to Congress, which triggered the impeachment of Bill Clinton. And that'll be the intent of Robert Mueller, will be to tee it up for impeachment, and then he'll wash his hands of it. And it'll be very interesting to see what the new Attorney General, William Barr, does, because he effusively appraised Mueller, said he's a man of integrity. That's a great phrase in Washington. Like I've said before, if someone's called a man of integrity, run for the exits when it's Washington, D.C.
Right.
And we'll see what Barr does. He seems to be suggesting through leaks that he's going to have a summary prepared of that report, that the entire thing won't be released to Congress because it goes to him first under the special counsel regulations. But frankly, I doubt that that's going to happen because the uproar is going to be so great to release it that he'll fold. He's an establishment Republican. You can pretty much count on that. He's a rhino. And, you know, now that he's Attorney General, he's kind of fireproof. The president can't go through another one at this point. So he'll probably betray the president as Jeff Sessions did before him.
Wow. And I mean, he's beyond a rhino. He's beyond an establishment, Republican. He was a CIA fixer. He was the general counsel, outside counsel for the CIA.
Well, these are the types that you get confirmed. See, that's the problem. And that's why Freedom Watch is the People's Justice Department. A long time ago, Jason, when Alan Keyes, who's a good friend of mine, and I admire Alan greatly, ran for the presidency, he was saying to his crowds that I will appoint Larry Klayman as Attorney General if I become president. I was, very flattered by Alan for saying that. But you see, Larry Klayman could never be confirmed by the Senate. It would be blocked by the Democrats. It wouldn't happen.
To handle.
Yeah, and that's why you have people like John Bolton, who's National Security Advisor. He could never be confirmed as Secretary of State or UN Ambassador. Anybody that stands for anything, that believes in anything, can't be confirmed by the U.S. Senate. And you'll also find Republicans blocking it because they want people they can control. They don't want people that they can't control. And that's why you have people, for instance, during the George W. Bush administration, like Alberto Gonzales, complete political hack as Attorney General, almost as bad as Janet Reno or Eric Holder. And that's why you have somebody like William Barr that President Trump put forward because he thought he could get confirmed. And unfortunately, the president took bad advice and nominated him. He should have nominated someone like my friend Bob Barr, congressman from Georgia who started impeachment along with me and others with Bill Clinton. But that doesn't happen. The people that you get through the confirmation process are establishment, by and large, hacks who don't want to risk their career or their standing in the Washington Club, in the boudoirs of Georgetown, to do anything bold and to take any action on behalf of the American people other than that which is politically correct.
And Larry, what role will Matthew Whitaker take on now that Barr has stepped in as Attorney General? I thought Matthew Whitaker was a very promising candidate.
Apparently he's staying at the Justice Department. He's going to get another position, but he's effectively being put out to pasture. And see, that's the problem. He took a position at one time, and they cut him down to size, the Democrats up there and the left, and they basically castrated the poor guy. And so consequently, he's got a job, but I don't know what, if anything, he'll be doing of any great importance over there, because frankly, the Justice Department, as I've said, has become the Department of Injustice. Just today, there was another report of gross prosecutorial abuse, if not criminal conduct, by Justice Department prosecutors in the prosecution of Jeffrey Epstein, that person who was convicted, of having sex with underage minors. And apparently there were some minors that should have been given notice of what was going on in the plea deal, victims who were not. I read the article briefly. I don't have particulars on it. It's been a busy day, Jason, but the Department of Justice has become the Department of Injustice, whether it's something like that or whether it's the way the president's being treated or whether it's the Bundys, who are now up on appeal again for no reason other than to protect the backsides of the prosecutors who committed crimes and hiding evidence, threatening whistleblowers and doing all kinds of other illegal acts, or whether it's Schaefer Cox, my client sitting in a maximum security prison in Terre Haute, Indiana, who was set up by FBI agents and the Justice Department and convicted to 33 years imprisonment. The poor kid was only 27 at the time. He's currently 33, and I'm trying to get him out. He's a very charismatic person. He was gun rights advocate. He uncovered a human trafficking scheme with young Eskimo boys in Alaska that state and federal officials were part of. They were making a lot of money at the expense of these young kids, and they set him up and they convicted him of allegedly threatening law enforcement. Sound familiar?
Yes.
And, I met with him about a month and a half ago in prison. The place looks like a medieval fortress. It was built in 1938 during the Roosevelt administration as part of the New Deal. They had me meet with him in a room that was about 25 degrees. They were hoping I'd leave. People have been killed in that prison. I mean, it's just terrible. And this is the justice system today, and I'm doing whatever I can to get him out. So these are the things that are going on in our Justice Department, and it's become the Department of Injustice.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of games of lawfare. So I want to come back to some of the points that you're raising, but just to stick with Adam Schiff again for a moment, from a legal standpoint, Larry. So we've spoken in the past how Robert Mueller, as special counsel, is intended to be strictly limited to investigating a crime. Now, he started out with no evidence of a crime, no allegations of a crime. He spoke about collusion. There is no U.S. code that calls collusion a crime per se. You could have a conspiracy to commit a crime, but that was not what they were investigating because they had no evidence. So if someone conducts a 2-year investigation and finds nothing, what's the legality of Adam Schiff just coming in and saying, well, we don't care, we're going to keep investigating until we find something or make something up?
Or even if they don't find anything, they're going to tie the president up for the next 2.5 years, hoping that he accomplishes nothing in office, smear him so he can't be reelected in 2020. So there's a broader agenda here. Plus, you're going to see impeachment proceedings start relatively soon, guaranteed. That'll then go over to the Senate for a trial, and it'll make what happened with Clinton look like a warm-up act. But what Mueller, was supposed to be investigating was whether or not there was collusion to the point where people in and around the president and the president himself had actually participated in stealing documents off of internet servers, such as the DNC. Of course, no one ever looked at what Hillary Clinton was doing with the Steele dossier or anything like that. And she was let off the hook with the email scandal, which is frankly, Jason, why I don't even watch cable news anymore. First of all, I've grown to really dislike Fox News, particularly since they have two faces. Judge Napolitano and others have been trashing Trump lately. But I don't even watch the other channels for that matter, because it's the same stuff over and over and over again. I'd rather spend my time doing something, trying to bring about justice, not engaging in entertainment over scandals.
Right.
So I hope people will go to Freedom Watch USA and support us with tax-deductible contributions, because we're actually trying to bring about justice. We're not just doing this for entertainment value.
Right. But I mean, is there nothing that legally people could just get accused of crimes and investigated ad nauseum? It seems kind of abusive for Adam Schiff to just announce an investigation. It's not like they found some evidence and now Schiff is going to investigate that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is abusive. And this was, all set up. We found out recently that Andrew McCabe and Rod Rosenstein, Lisa Page, Peter Strzok, James Comey, James Baker, they all conspired to mesh the president in an intelligence investigation, in an FBI investigation. And they had no basis to do it at the time. So they're searching for a crime. And the only crime they could find is whether or not anyone in and around the Trump administration, including the president himself, actually conspired with anyone to illegally hack internet sites such that the WikiLeaks documents could be revealed. And that's what they've been looking for, and they haven't found it, apparently. So they found people that have, not been truthful in front of the grand jury, such as allegedly Roger Stone and others, but they haven't found an actual crime yet, and they're searching for that, other than lying under oath. And, frankly, I don't condone lying under oath. If you lie under oath, you should be prosecuted. And my client, Jerry Corsi, did not lie under oath, and that's why he's not prosecuted. But, there's no justification for that. But that was not the reason that Mueller got the mandate to do his investigation. It wasn't to do perjury traps on people who were otherwise not honest.
Right. Yeah. I think a lot of people really object to what Robert Mueller has been doing. Before we get off of Andrew McCabe, Larry, were you as stunned as I was to see Andrew McCabe on 60 Minutes admitting that they just decided to invoke this 25th Amendment, and they were using it, as I understand, not even in the way that it's intended to be used. It's like if the president gets a head injury or brain cancer or is somehow incapacitated and unable to do his job. It's not a matter of the leadership of the FBI to come to their own private determination that he's incapable or unsuitable of being president and then oust him. Right?
No, the only difference between that and the Stasi in former East Germany or the KGB in the Soviet Union is that they didn't have to bother with investigations. They just killed people, okay, and got rid of them. But here you're trying to kill the president a slow death with phony investigations, and it's treasonous. And frankly, it's an outrage that Rod Rosenstein can walk out of the Justice Department a free man. He should be prosecuted. And we're going to prosecute him and McCabe and Comey and Lisa Page and Peter Strzok in our citizens' grand juries. They're going to be high in our list, which are going to be starting in March. And I hope you're going to be there to do live streams and everything else.
Yeah.
And this is very, very important because it's not going to happen with our current Department of Injustice or any special counsel. It's not going to happen. Only the people can rise up. You know, last night, Jason, I was watching a movie called Tombstone. Mm-hmm. About Wyatt Earp, okay, yep. A marshal in the Old West. And, you know, he enforced the law the way he had to enforce the law on behalf of the people. And, you know, it's got to the point where we have to do the same thing again. I'm not advocating gunning people down in the streets of Tombstone, but I'm talking about using our legal processes to hold people accountable on behalf of the American people. There was no Justice Department when Wyatt Earp and his brothers were U.S. Marshals. And they made their own determination as to what was legal and what was not within the bounds of the law and within the bounds of God's law. And that's where we're headed as a people today, the American people. They're going to have to rise up themselves and bring about justice peacefully and legally. It's not going to happen at the Department of Justice.
Right. Well, but just strictly from a legal standpoint, if Andrew McCabe, and I know this would never happen, but if Andrew McCabe were your client and you were advising him and he went on to 60 Minutes and said all that stuff that he said, what would you be thinking right now?
I would advise him not to do it, but apparently Andrew McCabe is more intent on making a lot of money selling books than his own best interest. But Andrew McCabe knows this. He knows that he's a protected species. Yes, there was a criminal referral. Nothing major will happen to Andrew McCabe. They protect each other at the FBI and the Justice Department. We see that with the Bundys. James Comey knows the same thing. Rod Rosenstein knows the same thing. Hillary Clinton knows the same thing. There are people who are above the law. Federal judges, other judges, they're above the law too. No one ever holds them accountable. It's very, very rare that one is even impeached. And this is the new American nobility. That, you know, we're just a bunch of peasants out there in the streets, the rest of us. They think they're royalty and they protect each other. And that's happened, you know, under successive administrations, whether it's Bill Clinton, whether it's Barack Obama, whether it was George W. Bush, they all protect each other. And they walk off scot-free laughing as they're going to the bank. And believe me, they're going to the bank. Yeah. So that's the country we live in right now, Jason. And you know, the American people are wising up to it. And, you know, we're on the threshold of a violent revolution, and that's what I'm trying to avoid. I've said that many times. But people are getting smarter and smarter and smarter, and they're beginning to see that it's a giant con job out of Washington to keep them down and to have these people rule the school, to control everything. And I'm not talking about socialism versus capitalism. I'm talking about a police state where they control, where they have mass surveillance, where they can destroy anyone they want through the NSA, CIA, FBI. And if that doesn't work, they'll conjure up some phony crime and have you arrested. And if that doesn't work, and it's happened before, they'll just go out and kill you if you're a big enough threat to them. You know, ask John Kennedy, ask a few other people that were probably hit by the CIA in conjunction with other foreign interests. So, you know, people are beginning to figure out what's been going on all these years. Yeah, if you stay quiet, like people in the streets of Beijing in China, you'll be okay. But if you challenge the establishment, if you really pose a threat to them, basically you're a dead man walking.
And this is why it's so important that people go to freedomwatchusa.org and support Larry and his team. There really is nobody else that I'm aware of that's doing the kind of work that you're doing there at Freedom Watch, and it's tough to do. I talk to Larry frequently during the week, even when he's not on the show. He's traveling around. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of time on the road. It's a lot of expenses that people don't see. So it's very important that people donate. It's a tax deduction, so you're really going to be helping yourself. And even if it wasn't a tax deduction, we need justice here. Larry, the other thing that's been happening that's really troubling is this collusion between the press, Hollywood, politicians, and the Department of Justice. We've got this situation with Jussie Smollett, who the information is getting stranger and stranger each day. They're saying now that he staged this fake crime, which I was prompted to think about this when you said we're on the verge of a violent revolution. This type of fake crime that pits Trump supporters versus, Democrats, and black people against white people, and gay people against straight people. This is a dangerous thing for this guy to be doing. I was a little troubled that the Chicago, I guess it was the chief of police who gave a press conference this morning, and when he was asked what would justice be for Jussie Smollett, he said he's got to apologize. That doesn't sound like justice.
Well, it's interesting. This may be, what doctors call a placebo. And I watched that press conference in large part. I was impressed by the police chief because of the strong statements he was making. He's African American. I have a client, who also has stuck his neck out, Demetric Penny in Dallas. He brought lawsuits against Louis Farrakhan, Black Lives Matter, others, over the massacre of 5 of his brothers, and he was assaulted. And he was called all kinds of names. He was threatened. He's very courageous. Black conservatives actually have more guts, by and large, than white conservatives do, because they're on the front line, and I have many who are my friends. But the reality is, Jason, as you're suggesting, is that someone like this individual,
Jussie Smollett.
Jussie Smollett, I always mispronounce his name. Nothing's going to happen to him, because, you see, there's such a fear among the white establishment of taking strong action against minorities, whether it's African American or whether it's Indian, ask Pocahontas, about that, that basically they bail out in the end. So, yeah, they'll charge him with something, but in the end they'll let him plead out to a much lesser offense. And to be blunt, that's because he's African American. You can get away with it. Look at what.
Are you sure that's the reason, Larry? Is it not that he's connected to Kamala Harris and Maxine Waters and influential politicians who maybe put him up to this? I mean, the official story that we're hearing now is that he staged this crime because he was unhappy with his salary on the show Empire. That makes no sense to me whatsoever.
Well, I might disagree with you a little bit there. Yeah, he was trying to get notoriety. He was trying to increase his stock, in the media. And this was attempted. Look, many years ago, Al Sharpton, the so-called Reverend, did the same thing, with another person in Brooklyn. I mean, he had her wrapped in a plastic bag with feces all around her and claimed it was a hate crime. Okay, this guy got away with it, and this actor is probably going to get away with it too. But yes, they had to do something, and at least the police chief spoke out, which I thought was very good. And like I said, it's the black conservatives, the black law enforcement, that frankly have more guts than the whites, because they're afraid that they'll be called racist. They're afraid they'll be attacked. And I don't know anybody in this country who's actually stood up to this kind of fraud and violence other than my friend Demetric Penny and a few others. It's pathetic. I brought lawsuits, Jason, as you know, in Dallas, Texas, against Louis Farrakhan of the Nation of Islam. His disciple killed the 5 policemen, assaulted my client, Demetric Penny. I brought it against Black Lives Matter. I brought it against against DeRay McKesson, who founded Black Lives Matter, and others. And I drew a judge, African-American judge, who dismissed the case without prejudice, sat on it for a couple years, never reached the merits. I think he was scared of himself.
Wow.
Being attacked and maybe killed by these people. And then I filed another case for the father of a fallen police officer, Patrick Zamarripa, a Latin fellow. And the judge wound up, another judge, a Trump appointee, a woman judge, dismissed the case on bogus grounds. I now have it on appeal. And I think that they're simply afraid of being called racist and being, in fact, killed themselves, God forbid.
Wow.
So this is the world we live in today. It's very hard to get justice. You have to break through. And that's why, we have citizens' grand juries. Louis Farrakhan, it's not even in dispute. I mean, he admitted in a CBS interview, he took credit for ordering the hit on Malcolm X.
Wow.
I mean, these people are dangerous, super dangerous people. And yet the judges are afraid of them, you see. And so I don't think anything's going to happen to Smollett in Chicago. It's going to be just, appearance rather than hard justice.
I didn't know that about Louis Farrakhan admitting to the assassination of Malcolm X. And I agree with you, there's a huge problem with anybody getting justice. So just to understand this correctly, Larry, it's totally at the judge's discretion as to when to act on the matters of a case. They can just sit on it and never do anything?
That's correct. In most jurisdictions, that's the case. In some jurisdictions, like the Eastern District of Virginia or the Central District of California, there are trigger points where they have to make decisions. That doesn't mean they're going to make the right decisions, but they have to make them in terms of allowing a case to go forward. And I like to try cases in Florida because they let cases go forward. It's a trial lawyer state. But in Washington, D.C., it's much tougher. And in other parts of the country, it's tougher. But the scary part is that there are very few judges. There are some, and I might say, Jason, that judges, in my opinion, are our most important public servants in principle. They're the ones that protect us from the tyranny of the deep state government and ourselves. But the judges we get on the bench, by and large, are politicians in robes, and they're establishment people. That's how they got there. That's how they got nominated. That's how they got confirmed. And there are very few that have the courage to do what needs to be done. There's really only one on the court, federal court, in Washington, D.C. that ever had any great degree of courage, and that was Judge Royce Lamberth. And to some extent, for a period of time, Judge Richard Leon in the NSA case. But the rest of them, they just shy away from controversy. And, they are more worried about protecting their own skin than meting out justice. And it's terrible. That's why we're starting our citizens' grand juries. The people need to do it for themselves. So go to freedomwatchusa.org and become part of that and contribute to that, because we don't have a justice system anymore.
It's just injustice that's happening. One of the strangest things, not to harp on this, but Al Sharpton, despite the whole Tawana Brawley rape allegations being proven to be a hoax, essentially just like Jesse Smollett, Al Sharpton remains an influential guy. As a matter of fact, more than ever, he's a political pundit. He's respected in the black community. He's seen as a member of the civil rights movement, or he's a highly respected guy. He's not seen as a hoaxer and a guy to be shunned. Why is that?
Well, highly respected in quotes. If you do a little research, he's not to be respected. I mean, he's a low-life, low-class, frankly, con man. That's what he is, like Jesse Jackson was when he used to shake down corporations, for money. And and I'm not singling out African Americans. There are plenty of white con men too out there, believe me. So this is what the media does. It creates these people. The leftist media creates these people. And in fact, I was watching Sharpton make a comment today about what's going on in Chicago, and he made reference and claims that he was duped way back when. And that's obviously not the case. And he himself, by the way, I sued Sharpton in Dallas because if you go back and look on the video and go to freedomwatchusa.org, he was threatening white people way back when. He was actually advocating their death.
Wow.
And it's unbelievable. I'm not joking. You can find it on the internet in his own words.
Amazing. So speaking of white con men, let's get back to Adam Schiff for a moment, because I do agree that he needs some investigation. There's a guy by the name of Ed Buck who is a super donor, a Democratic mega donor, and he's very close with Hillary Clinton. He's very close with Adam Schiff. He's a prominent figure in the LGBT community. He's wearing an LGBT supportive bow tie here. Problem is, he seems to have a penchant for dating young black men who overdose on crystal meth in his house. There have been 2 such individuals who have done this so far. Why don't we have a 2-year-long investigation into this guy that Robert Mueller could head up? There seems to be evidence of some kind of something going on there.
He's allegedly just part of the whole Clinton crowd of criminals that have propped her up, you know, for so many years. I mean, I don't know the specifics of this, so I can't say one way or the other. But yes, this needs to be investigated, and it's serious. And this is what Hillary Clinton does. She brings these people in and around her that line her pockets, and she really has no views on anything. You know, she's herself gay, frankly, and, you know, she hides that, so she has no great respect in either the gay, lesbian, or LGBT community. I mean, they actually look upon her as an Uncle Tom, so to speak. But okay, when money talks, nobody walks. I mean, anybody that'll line her pockets and her husband's pockets, they're fair game. That's Hillary Clinton.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's really troubling the way this injustice system works. But there's a lot of information about this guy, Ed Buck, and the now 2 black male prostitutes who died at parties at his house. Now, you were talking about Schaefer Cox, Larry. There's another individual who I've just become aware of, and I'm a little behind on this story, but you know, there's so much going on, it's impossible for everybody to know about everything, and you know, people who are on top of this story about Ross Ulbricht might not be busy in all the lawsuits and legal things that you're doing, but Ross Ulbricht is a guy who essentially started a website called the Silk Road, which was similar in concept to eBay. It's an open marketplace where people could buy and sell things, but it used only Bitcoin, the cryptocurrency. And Ross is credited in the world of Bitcoin as being basically the second most important person in the history of Bitcoin after Satoshi Nakamoto, the potentially fictitious individual who's credited with creating it. Ross is in jail 5 years into 2 consecutive life sentences. Chuck Schumer, the despicable Democratic senator from New York, this state, was pivotal in the incarceration of Ross. Even though Ross was conducting this business and creating the website in San Francisco, Schumer found out about it and brought it to the Southern District of New York, where Preet Bharara was the lead prosecutor, and this guy basically got railroaded into jail. Williams and Connolly was his law firm, Larry. What's up with this pattern of people that we know getting these Clinton-connected lawyers and then landing in trouble?
Well, the Clinton-connected lawyers have done quite well in the past, haven't they?
Depends on which side of it you're on.
Right. I have locked horns with Williams and Connolly now for over 25 years. I know them as well as anybody else. David Kendall in particular, who represented the Clintons and still does. And yeah, I mean, they're greasers. That's what they are. And they're fixers. And, yeah, you know, they represent their clients, and they'll lie when they have to in pleadings. And in the case of Kendall, they'll actually participate in destroying evidence with Hillary Clinton's emails, and they get away with it because that's the Washington Club. And they'll get away with it, and there'll be Republican lawyers on the other side that'll get away with it. You know, and they all carry on. They make a lot of money. I mean, the legal fees now are you know, somewhere between $1,000 and $2,000 an hour from these law firms. It's unreal. Sometimes even more. So yeah, they protect each other. It's an industry.
But isn't it astounding that someone who created a website, he wasn't, as far as I know, even selling drugs himself. He was just managing the website. I mean, we hear about YouTube and Twitter basically being absolved of any guilt because they're just the network upon which other people put content. And the Decency and Communications Act, Section 230, protects them as operators of the network. But yet Ross did not enjoy such protection as the operator of this website. He was sent to jail, 2 consecutive life sentences. Jeffrey Epstein, who's raped multiple underage girls, got 18 months, and this guy's in jail for the rest of his life.
That's our justice system, yeah.
I mean, I know I can't speak for you, and you're tremendously busy, Larry, but do you think you would have any time to look into this Ross old book?
I would love to. I mean, I've said it before, Jason. I've kind of morphed from special prosecutor with Larry Klayman. I'm still that, with our citizens' grand juries, and listen to our radio show. You're on it sometimes and frequently. You're a great host, and you're very knowledgeable, Jason. But go to freedomwatchusa.org, listen to the podcasts. But I've become kind of like a special defense counsel as well. I mean, that's kind of where my heart is these days, whether it's the Bundys or whether it's Jerry Corsi or whether it's others, because I see the injustice that's out there.
Yeah.
And frankly, I would never be a prosecutor today at the Justice Department. I would not accept it if it was offered to me, because it's so corrupt. I saw enough corruption when I was there. That's why I started Judicial Watch, but now it's 100-fold worse. Yes, so I'd be interested in looking into that case.
Wonderful. People can learn more about what's going on with Ross's case by going to freeross.org, and they can sign the petition. Basically, his mom and his family have been incredibly diligent in keeping on this and trying to get Ross's sentence commuted. At this point, if they could even reduce it to 10 years, he'd be out in 4 and he could carry on with his life. This is a productive, creative guy who's got a lot of skills and has never done any violent crimes. We got a major problem in the prison system and the justice system in this country.
Well, we do, Jason. And, I can tell you what went on with regard to the Bundys in prison, or what's going on with regard to Schaefer Cox. It's terrible. I've been communicating with the Bureau of Prisons over Schaefer and the way he's being treated. They threw him in the hole, which is solitary confinement for a while, not because he did anything, but simply because he raised issues as to his safety. Yeah. And that was an excuse to put him in the hole. And
has there been any progress with Schaefer Cox?
Yeah, there's going to be some progress here. We're getting some new documents. He's up for resentencing in May. I hope that the judge will, set him free. He's really a good person. And but the establishment's afraid of him because he has the ability to unite people. And he's not exactly pro-government, but he's not anti-government either. He's for individual rights. But they don't want that. You got to crush somebody like that. So Schaefer's just one of many who have been crushed.
Yeah, and I think Ross falls into that category as well. People should keep in mind that Chuck Schumer is on the Senate Banking Committee, and I would think that a lot of banks weren't very excited by the idea of a marketplace that sidestepped the US dollar and used cryptocurrency. We've heard that JP Morgan introduced some kind of cryptocurrency, so I don't know, there's a lot going on in that world. It's hard to keep up with all of these things. And the last time you were on the show here, Larry, we were talking to Ryan Bundy. What's been progressing in the case of the Bundys as far as the crooked prosecutors there in Nevada trying to double jeopardy them or whatever they're doing?
They're trying to get the case back to Nevada from Washington, D.C. We drew a good judge in Washington, D.C. So we're fighting to keep it there, because to have it sent back to Las Vegas would not be a favorable forum with the former judge in our case, Gloria Navarro, and her band of other judges out there. It's not a good place. So we've been fighting over that, and we're hopeful that it'll stay in Washington, D.C., but we'll fight wherever we have to fight on that. We have a case involving the land, to have it declared owned by the people of Nevada and Clark County, which is in and around Las Vegas, and the Bundy Ranch in Bunkerville. And that's a very important case, and we're in the briefing part of that case. And then, of course, we have the appeal for the Bundys, because the prosecutors, who could otherwise be disbarred or even go to prison for the crimes they committed in lying to the court, in hiding evidence, exculpatory evidence, and threatening whistleblowers, they're trying to save their own skin, and the Bundys become the victims. So they took that up on appeal. And if the matter gets sent back for retrial, the Bundys could wind up doing life imprisonment if things don't go well. Wow. So I hope people will go to KlaymanBundyDefenseFund.org, KlaymanBundyDefenseFund.org, and contribute to that, because it's very important. The Bundys are standing up for you, not just for themselves. They're standing up to a tyrannical federal government that's even worse than it was in colonial days because there's much more power today. And this federal government wanted to kill them. They wound up assaulting Klayman's sister, Margaret, tasing his sons, killing the bulls in his herd so he couldn't make a living. These are the bulls that procreate, with cows, and burying them in a secret mass grave. And, they had sharpshooters surrounding the ranch. They tried to entrap them and then tried to put them away for life. And, you can't have this. Ranching is the American way of life. This land is our land. This is exactly what America was founded upon. The only thing you can count on, Jason, is the land. It's the only thing that stays constant. Yeah. And so I hope people will support the Bundys, Klayman. Go to KlaymanBundyDefenseFund.org and please contribute generously to that because we have a big fight ahead of us.
It's amazing, Larry. I mean, these federal agents that would shoot and kill animals and beat up members of the Bundy family and throw them in jail for doing nothing, they're the ones who should be in jail. It's shocking to me that Klayman Bundy and his sons are facing the possibility of life in prison. I mean, if people could actually meet the Bundys, they're among the friendliest people you could possibly imagine. I mean, this is a nightmare because, even if they avoid prison, Larry, the stress of having to deal with this and think about it every day, it is just evil to be subjecting them to this type of, it's not just prosecution, it's persecution.
Not only that, our so-called government, it's the prosecutors in that same corrupt U.S. Attorney's Office in Nevada that took the appeal. They eventually got the Solicitor General who controls appeals in Washington, D.C. to sign off on it. And this is during the Trump administration, because I was lobbying Sessions to throw the case out, to stop the prosecution. But there's this deep state in the Justice Department run by leftist, pro-Clinton, pro-Obama, pro-everything that's wrong with this country lawyers. I mean, 97% contributed to Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. These are the lawyers that are really running the department. It's not the appointees of President Trump. So it's snuck through, and this thing's going on. It's to protect the prosecutors, not because they want justice, but they don't want to wind up being disciplined or even disbarred for what they did. So they're hoping that the Ninth Circuit will come up with a decision that lets them off the hook. And that's what it's about. It's not about justice.
And reporting on this, people call me a conspiracy theorist. All these guys are conspiring against the people of the United States. It's disgraceful. This is the U.S. Attorney in Nevada, Nicholas?
Yeah. Let me tell you, I've gotten to know the Bundys extremely well over the last 4 years, 5 years at this point. Visited Klayman over 30 times in prison. Visit him at his ranch. I was just there a couple weeks ago. These are the finest people I've ever met. These are true Americans. I mean, they risked everything for what they believed was their constitutional rights, and the constitutional rights of we Americans, was founded by our founding fathers in 1776. I'm not exaggerating. And if these people are crushed, then what's going to happen to the rest of us? So we have to do Bundy's last stand, for lack of a better word. You're Custer's last stand. Well, we're going to succeed at this one, but we need the support of the American people to do it. So again, please go to KlaymanBundyDefenseFund.org and contribute, because this is an expensive proposition.
Yeah, I mean, you're up against the government and basically unlimited resources. And of course, Larry, everyone's been following your FOIA case against Robert Mueller. Has there been any more activity there? I mean, it seems like the whole Robert Mueller investigation is winding down. You revealed evidence from their own email communications and text message communications that seem to indicate criminal leaks of grand jury information, unprecedented cooperation with the mainstream media to push out stories and leak information in an effort to sway public opinion. How is this not jury tampering, or, it seems egregious?
Well, it is. It's manipulative. And of course, I filed a lawsuit on behalf of Dr. Jerome Corsi against Mueller for violating his constitutional rights. I brought a criminal complaint against Mueller and others at the Justice Department. Where that goes, I don't know. But we do have a lawsuit that's going forward. And you see, that's the difference between Jerry Corsi and anyone else here that you may think of, okay? Some people just talk and post internet things on Instagram. Okay, Jerry had told the truth, and he's actually fighting back, not just on behalf of himself, but the American people. And he is a real hero as well. So,
how's this
go
case going?
Nation and learn more about that, or LarryKlayman.com.
Has there been any activity on this case of Corsi v. Mueller et al.?
It's in its preliminary stages. For a while, it was stayed because the government was out of business, so to speak, when there was a government shutdown, but it's cranking up again. And I think that it did factor a lot into the respect, quote unquote, that the special counsel now has for Dr. Corsi and me, because they have been treating us better in this case, and I hope that that continues, because they know that we're not just there posting Instagram pictures. We're there actually fighting back. And that's the way you get respect, is that you can't roll over. You can't become a yes man. You have to hold them accountable to the same rule of law that they seek to hold you accountable. You cannot turn the other cheek, and you can't hope that it's going to go away. It won't go away. It's like cancer. It will continue to grow, and it will destroy you if you're a client, and it'll destroy the country as a whole if you don't do something about it. So again, please support Freedom Watch at freedomwatchusa.org. Support Crowdsource the Truth. You play a vital role, Jason, because you get the truth out. That's what you do. You travel as much as I do. I mean, you're on the road all the time. You're tireless.
Thank you, Larry.
This is something we need to hang together, as Ben Franklin said, or we'll all hang separately.
It's true. And we're getting close to the end of our hour here. I don't know if this is something that we want to discuss, or it's an ongoing matter, and I know there's a lot of sensitive issues about it, but of course Roger Stone was back in court today after the ill-advised action of posting kind of a provocative photo of the judge in his own case. You have any comment on this, Larry?
Well, I have to be somewhat circumspect, because I do respect the judge's order that witnesses and their counsel not engage in anything that could prejudice justice.
Got it.
And I'm not going to do that with regard to Dr. Corsi, because he is a material witness in that case, and he will testify truthfully. He won't lie, but he'll tell it like it is. He's never, ever said anything negative about Roger Stone. To the contrary, Roger Stone has said many negative things about him and about me. And we were threatened the same way the judge was threatened. We were threatened the same way Randy Credico was threatened, in a general sense. And consequently, I did file an amicus brief with the court saying that Roger Stone should be gagged, and I do believe he should be gagged, and he was gagged today, totally, because I don't care who the judge is. You can't threaten a judge. And wasn't right what he did, and hopefully we won't see any more of that into the future.
Right. And gag orders, I've heard in the past, are generally considered unconstitutional and are pretty rare. So this is an example of some egregious behavior, perhaps, on Roger Stone's part, and definitely not the smartest thing to do, and a good example of how you got to be careful on social media, and don't even do anything that could be even construed as provocative, because what's the upside?
Well, there is no upside. I mean, basically, he should go into court, prove his case, get competent lawyers. It's questionable whether he has competent lawyers at this point. They put him on the witness stand today. Nobody can believe that happened, and apparently the judge, was interrupting him, saying, well, Mr. Stone, that's nice, but 2 minutes ago you testified exactly the opposite. That was not a good idea. But, it's funny. I've had differences with this judge, legitimate intellectual differences, but she was right in this instance to gag him. And not only can he not talk, but his surrogates can't talk either about the case. And the judge did the right thing.
Wow. So that's interesting. This is Judge Amy Berman Jackson, who people might have initially heard about because she was involved in the Benghazi case. What was Amy Berman Jackson's involvement in the Benghazi case?
Well, she dismissed that case, and I disagreed with that. She dismissed it on the eve of Memorial Day. I was very critical of that. So Larry Klayman hasn't pulled any punches with regard to Judge Amy Berman Jackson. But on the other hand, You know, she's got a very difficult situation right now in this prosecution. It's a criminal prosecution, and she has to maintain order in her courthouse and also not prejudice the jury pool and not allow witnesses and herself to be threatened. So in this case, Jason, she did the right thing.
But when you say she dismissed the Benghazi case, what do you mean? That was the case against Hillary Clinton?
Yeah, it was the case where I had alleged on behalf of our clients, Patricia Smith and Charles Woods, that Hillary Clinton, through using a private email server that was unsecured, it was hacked and negligently being hacked by adverse powers. And we know that it was. The FBI, even Comey said that gave rise to the coordinates of Ambassador Christopher Stevens and our brave client's sons, Ty Woods and Sean Smith, resulting in her death. So we sued Hillary Clinton for wrongful death, and we sued her for defamation because she had called our clients liars. Miss Hillary had told them that it's not funny, that what she told the public, this was a walk in the woods by Muslims who were angry about criticizing the Prophet Muhammad, when in fact she knew that Al-Qaeda was responsible, but she called our clients liars. So we had sued for defamation, and she said that when she was no longer Secretary of State, so she had no immunity. So Judge Berman, dismissing that was incorrect. But again, this is a hot potato case, you see, and the intelligentsia protect each other. So we went up to the D.C. Circuit. They affirmed Judge Jackson's ruling. We then went to the Supreme Court. They didn't take cert because Hillary Clinton is a protected species in Washington, D.C. She's part of this class of political nobility that has been untouchable. And that's why you got to go to freedomwatchusa.org, because she needs to be indicted with our citizens' grand juries and held accountable for this and all the other crimes she's committed. freedomwatchusa.org. This is an expensive proposition. Please contribute with tax-deductible contributions.
Yeah, and there's nobody else who's holding these people accountable. So the other thing I wanted to mention to you, Larry, a lot of people saw that Laura Loomer yesterday had another protest outside of Twitter. Laura's been removed from Twitter for, I guess, what they said was, some sort of racist tweet or whatever. I think she said something about Ilhan Omar being, it says Laura Loomer claims Islamophobia doesn't exist. But Laura had with her an entire list of tweets that were allowed to remain on Twitter that included death threats against the president, hashtag kill all the Jews. And, Laura was just pointing out that newly elected congressional representative from Minnesota, Ilhan Omar, is supported by the Muslim Brotherhood and CARE. She was sworn in on a Quran, which is a political ideology, not just merely a religious book. Laura has detailed many times on the show how Ilhan Omar is connected to numerous individuals who are involved in terrorist agencies or terrorist organizations as recognized by the UAE, the United States government. I don't know if people realize this, but Laura also told me that Chase Bank has blocked Laura's access to her own money. So in addition to losing her access to PayPal, losing her access to Twitter, losing her access to Uber, Lyft, Medium, all of these things, Laura cannot even get her own money out of the bank. So we're seeing the slow, real-time strangulation of Laura Loomer.
You're right, Jason, and it's terrible. And Laura's going to be on my radio show tomorrow. It's taped and it goes out Sunday. Special prosecutor with Larry Klayman. We're going to talk about this and other things, but Laura's a very brave person. She's a hero in her own right. She does it a different way than you and I do it, but she makes her point. And Laura Loomer needs to be protected. She has, First Amendment rights of free speech. And we're going to be looking into, what Chase Bank did in this regard. It's not kosher, so to speak.
Exactly. People can support Laura by going to lauraloomer.us, and she really needs your support more than ever, because I don't think any of us want to live in a world where corporations can decide who gets to speak and who doesn't. It's also worth mentioning, I think people know this, but if they don't, Al-Walid bin Talal, the Saudi royal who is basically at war with Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia and an ally to Donald Trump. Al-Walid owns more shares of Twitter than Jack Dorsey, the guy who created it. So I think we're in a very dangerous situation, Larry, when foreign individuals who adhere to Sharia law and things that are totally against the United States Constitution have this type of influence over our free press. I mean, frankly, even if Laura is being Islamophobic, you know, freedom of speech includes the right for people to say whatever they want as long as it's not a violent threat. You know, the Nazis have freedom of speech. Anybody who is anti-anything has freedom of speech, and Ilhan Omar should just speak out against Laura if she disagrees
well,
with her.
What we do with Ilhan Omar. I mean, we have a petition we're going to be filing with the Department of Homeland Security because apparently she allegedly committed immigration fraud. She married her brother and was naturalized as a citizen, and the issue remains whether she can keep her naturalized citizenship, having allegedly lied in the course of getting someone their green card who was her brother, I mean, and marrying her brother. And of course we know that, you know, there's a history of that in the Islamic religion, quote unquote. Prophet Muhammad married his 7-year-old daughter. So apparently that's acceptable. So I don't think that Laura's Islamophobic. This culture of radical Islam is not compatible with Judeo-Christian values, and that's what she's basically talking about, simply not compatible.
I agree with you. Laura points to documentation that says they're going to infiltrate Congress and take over the country, destroy us and everything. So that's not Islamophobia. That's pointing out evidence in their own documentation. So it's a really shocking situation that's going on with Laura Loomer, and Ilhan Omar is not someone whose point of view I agree with. I definitely wish you success in your efforts against her, and certainly if she's committed immigration fraud, she does not deserve to be in Congress telling people what to do with the wall and various policies. Larry, we're just about out of time. Was there anything else you wanted to add before we go? You're busy fighting the left-leaning loonies there in Congress.
Well, we're fighting, Jason, you know, the New York Times for Sheriff Joe Arpaio, the Washington Post, Jeff Bezos, we've sued him, Huffington Post, we've sued a lot of other major media operations here on the left. And again, we're the only ones that are pushing back. You know, I was glad to see what happened, you know, with those young kids the other day, that there was a lawsuit brought. But for that, you know, it's Freedom Watch that's out there. We have a leftist media strike force. So go to freedomwatchusa.org. Please, again, contribute, join, get our free newsletters, sign up, watch our YouTubes, listen to our radio show, Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. It's my radio show. And please share what you learn with the rest of the American people, because we need to rise up. We need to save the country. We're hanging by a thread, and we're on the verge of violent revolution, and we want to try to prevent that.
Absolutely. You know, it's curious, Larry, as I'm just looking through the news here, there doesn't seem to be any coverage of Nick Sandmann's lawsuit against the Washington Post in the Washington Post. I guess that's not a surprise, but...
No, you don't find too much about some other things on Fox either. They are promoting this one. But this is the hypocrisy of what goes on today. It's not all the news that's fit to print, as the New York Times puts it. It's the news that sells your newspaper, and if you've got leftist readership, you're not going to be reporting about that. And I might add, this is an example of Fox News. Napolitano comes out and says, oh, there's no case. There's a big case here.
Says there's no case for Nick Sandmann?
Oh, yeah, he said, you know, it's going to lose. He said that a number of times about my cases at Judicial Watch in the old days, you know.
But why does he think that?
To Judge Knapp for a while, but I think he's basically mad that Trump didn't give him a job. You know, I think that's probably it.
Why would Judge Knapp say there's no case for Nick Sandmann? He was a private...
Ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Larry, thanks for joining me tonight. It's always a great show when you're on. People love hearing your insights. I really enjoy speaking with you. great guy, great lawyer, and a champion of freedom. I hope that everybody will go to freedomwatchusa.org, support Larry and his team. He's doing some of the most important work that's being done right now to protect our freedom. I want to thank him for joining us tonight. I want to thank everybody for watching. I'll be back tomorrow with David Hawkins and Reverse CSI Investigations, so don't miss that. And thanks everybody for watching. Larry, have a great night. I'll see you soon.
Thank you, Jason. God bless you.
Take care. You too.